Welcome to Soul Mastery for the soul-led entrepreneur who desires it all, purpose, power, and profits. I'm your host, Jay Ali Desai, business and success mentor who has helped countless entrepreneurs build and scale their businesses through the lens of human design, hypnosis, energetic strategies to not only increase your impact, but to help you increase your income. And today, we're going to take these same concepts and we are going to explore them through subconscious health and with my fellow colleague, my fellow comrade, I suppose is a great way to say it, in the Women Thrive Summit. You guys know that I am a speaker this year, and my guest today is a speaker from last year. Paige, welcome. I'm so excited to have you on today.
Oh, thank you so much. What a beautiful intro. And it's great to be here. I love the Women Thrive community, and I have found such incredible connections with women like yourself. And I'm glad that you and I have connected, one-on-one in our own way before this. And so we just get to build these long-term relationships as we create in business and create in our lives. So thank you for having me.
I'm so excited. So Paige, before we get into all the things, introduce yourself. Who are you? What do you do? And share a little bit of not how you got to the podcast, but how you got to doing what you're doing right now. And then we're going to dive into everything.
Absolutely. Yeah. So my name is Paige Frisone. I'm a subconscious health practitioner, and I help people that struggle with depression, anxiety, trauma, and addiction heal on a cellular and subconscious level. And I do that by implementing a modality, a subconscious emotional processing system that incorporates over 14 methods from Eastern and Western medicine combined. So really comprehensive system that helps people live by their design and live a life of optimal health and wellness that sustains itself. So a lot of my mission, I'd love to hear from you. How does that sound? Because I know that's a mouthful to hear that.
Oh, it sounds really intriguing, especially I love the concept of East meets West. That's for me, when I hear somebody share that, it's like, okay, so this is a holistic approach. This isn't just here's a Band-Aid for the symptom. Let's get to the root cause. Is that accurate?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the main things that we do in session together is we locate through applied kinesiology or muscle reflex testing the root trauma or the root memory, whether it's from this lifetime or past lifetimes or generational inheritances that are signaling present day stress. And so, so many people have wild perceptions based on societal conditioning, based on medical conditioning about what's going on when the body has symptoms. And I love to simplify this by saying that at the root of every physical symptom, there's an emotional charge. And that emotional charge that hasn't been fully processed creates energy that's stagnated. And stagnated energy then translates in the only way it knows how, which is through every itis in the book, right? So inflammatory disease or bowel stuff or headaches or chronic, mental patterns that aren't serving you. And so we see these things as separate from the mind and energy bodies when they're really all connected. And trauma is a big topic as well, right? But on a simple scale, we can really say that anything that hasn't been fully processed is a form of trauma in the system. And so when we can liberate that stagnation, we can heal, which is our design to rebalance and be completely whole.
So you're sharing on trauma here, and I'm curious your thoughts right now, or I would say, let's just say for the last year, there's been a lot of trauma-informed coaching, mentoring, commentary. So when I think of trauma, I know we have our small T's, big T's. We all know that. So big traumas, little traumas. But people who are not actually informed, like they did a Google search and they're like, okay, I'm trauma informed now. For me, I find that very detrimental. For example, I had someone who wanted to work with me who I said no to because she has bipolar disorder. And while that, we all have something, but for what she wanted to come to me for, I knew that I am not the mentor for her. So I redirected her. Please, you need to see a therapist because, some of the processes that I use, when you do have a personality disorder like bipolar, it can trigger responses that I am not prepared for. that I am not qualified to deal with. How does that come into play with your work? Because you're dealing with, so let's take addiction. Addiction to a certain degree is a way that we use to cope with things that have happened to us or are happening to us.
Mm-hmm.
So I just want to hear your thoughts about this. I know that was like a big question, but I think it's also important, especially knowing like what you're doing and how it's coming out into the world.
Yeah.
This backstory is beneficial.
Yes, absolutely. And thank you for this, because it is such a broad topic and it is so complex, and it deserves the respect of having these conversations that so many people aren't having. And so the first piece I'd like to address is what it means to be trauma informed, right? Like, trauma informed in nature, I find, is subject to misperception. We all have perceptions, and that's why I really work with people in rewiring perceptions, because it's not just about the incident or the thing that happened. It's really more about your response or your reaction to the thing that happened. And so these layers start complicating what's going on in the mind, because the incident originally, whatever that was, and oftentimes it's chronic incidents that accumulate over time where we weren't equipped to process the sensory experiences at that moment. And so, for example, if you experience something in childhood, you don't even have to know what it is that you experience. But let's say mom went to the store and there was an environment emotionally around you of perceived abandonment, right? Where all of a sudden you're like, oh gosh, she's not coming back. And there's fear and there's panic and there's dread and there's all these things that you'd never choose to experience. Later in your life, let's say at age 45, you're going to the grocery store and you have this image flash in your mind of when mom went to the grocery store. And there's maybe no logical rhyme or reason why, but all of a sudden the body is flooded with those same feelings of panic and anxiety and perceived abandonment, right? And so a lot of self-aware people might be able to make that connection of like, oh yeah, this is because we had this experience when I was young. So many other people don't have that awareness. And so it can be very disorienting. And all of a sudden the mind starts thinking things of what's wrong with me, I'm bad, I'm broken, I'm crazy. And then we start being pathologized or diagnosed in the Western world. Typically, these are big generalized statements, right?
Yep.
And there's medication to support these diagnoses. And then we're like in this whole labyrinth, when in reality, if we could process the root emotions of what was going on at that time and honor the wisdom of that trauma, then we can upgrade the cellular memory of it. And so this is very different than just learning textbook trauma, although I think that that matters. I think that that's significant for starters. But then there's another level, which I find a lot of value in, and this is subjective, so you can tell me what you think, of healing your own trauma. Really, we're talking about integrity. We're talking about walking your walk through the world, because, you know, there's different types of practitioners in the world and there's someone for everyone. But some people, I think, might prefer going to somebody who has overcome trauma in a really embodied way, where you can feel what that feels like vibrationally, versus just knowing in your mind what that looks like. And there is no bad or wrong. Those are just different approaches. But I think it's a slippery slope in the world. And you'll find this in any profession on all ends of the spectrum, as far as who's really embodied and in integrity versus maybe somebody who's less so. And that's a perception. That's your judgment. So what do you feel about that? Because, you know, I'm talking about the difference between knowing something in your mind versus really embodying it and walking your walk and practicing your practice.
Yeah. So again, I really just feel like it depends on what the topic is. Mm-hmm. So you and I, we deal with very different situations, a different subject matter. I don't know what the right word is here. So for me, I would approach it very differently. Like, that is not for me to address. I can address addiction to stress, because when you're growing your business, very relevant. But if it was something deeper, I don't feel like I would be equipped. So I would recommend them to go somewhere else. So I really, again, I think it would come down to the topic. But what I like is that you're, again, using Eastern Western practices. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So when we're addressing these things, you're talking about knowledge and embodiment. So this is from your personal experience and from your learning.
Right. Yes.
So as you were sharing earlier, like, as we're both part of this Women Thrive Summit, you're also writing a book. or you're up writing in their book? Fill me in on the details here first, and then let's go from there.
Absolutely. So there is a Women Thrive book that is coming out at the end of October, so this fall, and I'm amongst 10 other incredible women sharing stories of overcoming adversity in a chapter of this compilation. So it's a powerhouse book full of stories or vignettes. And really, the process has been unlike anything else that I've ever experienced. I am a writer too in nature. I'm a professional writer, and I have been published a lot of different times in different ways. However, this was like my first love in life was writing. And so this is my moment to become an officially published author, and in such a beautiful community that does it so delicately, because writing is intimate and reading is intimate. And when it comes to sharing stories on paper and dealing with trauma, as we've been talking about, there's a specific way to do it so that you're not creating shock value for the reader. That's not the point. You want to be able to take care of this story for yourself as somebody who's experienced it, as well as the people that are reading it, because my mission is to be of service. And if I can share a story that may help other people who have been through similar things, I'm going to do that. And yet I have to take care of myself throughout that process. And so what I find is really parallel in the writing process, as is in the work that I offer, is resourcing, and how critical it is to resource and help clients resource. Because if we're going to uncover a memory that's not always conscious, that's not always something that they're aware they've experienced until we uncover it, there's a lot of potential for reaction there. And we don't want to re-traumatize. That's not the point. So we do it in a very gentle way where we're building up resourcing in the system first and foremost, and every step of the way. And in the event we get kind of stuck in those layers of, I'm not just sad, but I'm mad that I'm sad, or I'm judging myself that I'm mad that I'm sad, or right, whatever that lineage happens to be for somebody, then I really like to bring in the concept of parts work, right? Which you might find as an internal family systems person if you practice parts work. And I'm not certified in that necessarily, but it's important to have an awareness of it, I feel, when it comes to trauma, because we can unblend ourselves from those triggers, from those parts that take us over in the moment. And we can see them as these personified characters or entities or what have you, so that we still have our inner self-resourced energy while we're observing this really unpleasant experience. And so when it comes to the writing process specifically, it's been a lot of rewriting, because a lot of it has been first draft, second draft, third draft of me having to just let it all out in a really ineffective way, which is always the beginning, I think, and then refine and fine tune with strategy and discernment what is going to be the most accurate depiction of my story, but also knowing at the end of the day, it's not about me. And so how can I help this land for somebody else?
So right there, everything you've just shared has spoken to, like, you, it sounds like one of your core values is integrity.
Yes.
So that is beautiful. So now the book comes out in end of October. Between now and then, what are you doing? What are you sharing? Like, fill us in on who you are as a subconscious health practitioner.
Absolutely. So I love the Women Thrive community for so many reasons, right? And I shared that there's such a quality of woman that comes through these doors, virtually or otherwise. But beyond that, there's this platform that we've, met each other in, where we get to share our stories, and we get to learn how to effectively share our stories without being taken over by them, and being in the name of service and whatever other outcomes we have for our business. And I do find that that's very unique and different from not only what the speaking world is doing these days, but what maybe you'd find in a therapy office. And I love therapy. I talk so much about my journey with therapy personally, but you don't really get to do this or be as transparent as we get to be here. So I'm loving that, because I lived in shame for so long, and I have experienced so many traumas that I desperately wanted to feel we're worth something at the end of the day, right? And that's my own wounding that I've had to heal from. I had chronic night terrors until age 7. So those were the most transformative years of my life developmentally, where I would wake up screaming bloody murder every single night to visions and shadows and lower level beings that I didn't remember the next morning. And so I knew it would happen at night. I'm going to bed expecting invasion, and I'm waking up not able to even reclaim all parts of me consciously. And so that was chronic disorientation and unsafety, and this level of amnesia almost, where I just felt like I was out of control of myself. And so I was in therapy starting age 7, because that's the intuitive thing to do for parents that are like, what else do we do? And I was like any other kid. So I just told stories of my day to day. And I actually was bullied at school as well. And so I didn't have safe places to go. I was very scared of the dark. I was very scared of myself. I thought I was dangerous because of these things that were around me. And that started creating a lot of stories about myself really young. From there, I wound up in hospitals having brain scans and people trying to figure out, quote unquote, what was wrong with me. And I developed, an eating disorder later in my life, into school years, in high school and college. And I was a perfectionist. I was competitive. I had a very anxious personality, working to overcompensate for these internal distressors that I couldn't find support for. And I lost 10 years of my life to anorexia and exercise addiction, and was really stuck in the Western system trying to figure out, why am I not getting better? In fact, I would get a lot worse. And I was on a whole cocktail of prescription medication for things I wasn't really sure of, and to treat things that were repercussions of the eating disorder, because it's so hard on the body. There's a lot there. And I took myself off of prescription medication 4 years ago, which I always preface, don't do that. I never, ever recommend doing that. But for me, it was very divine. And in the book, I talk about what that moment was for me and what that journey looked like, because it doesn't make sense to the conscious logical brain. It's only something the soul can really understand. And so after I got off those medications, I allowed my body to come back to baseline, which was so much in alignment with the work I was offering at that time, which is that the body's designed to heal. So if that's true, and it is true, then let me prove that to myself. And so I was able to do that. It became my own science experiment in a way, which again, I don't recommend, but I needed to do for myself. And as a result of my body coming back online, and it took about 2 years to fully feel like myself again, I reclaimed 20 years of my life that were repressed. I didn't have any chronological memories or recollection of what had happened in my childhood. It was all very blacked out. I had very brief spurts of information that would come through at times. But this one night I was laying in bed and all of my memories came back like a simulation. I felt like I was immersed in the movie A Christmas Carol, where you have this entity that's guiding you through past versions of your life. Yeah. And I was taken from preschool all the way to high school, all those memories that had been blacked out from 3 to 13. So I stopped when I got to high school in this remembrance. And I remembered repressed sexual trauma that occurred in childhood. And this was the missing piece of my puzzle, because I'd been chronically, consciously trying to figure out the why behind such magnitude of distress and chaos and depression and anxiety and suicidality and all of these things that had shown up in my life. And so the subconscious healing work was, for me, one of the things that allowed me to know that recovery was possible. I had never believed that that was possible for me, or that I could heal at all. And I was really stuck in the muck for too long, and I lost a lot of time in that. So my life and lived experiences and my academic experiences and my treatment experiences all inform so much of my passion doing what I do, because I lived it, and I feel that everybody can benefit from understanding the value of the subconscious, what it's doing for us to protect us and keep us safe, right? And
100%.
You do hypnosis, so that's subconscious work as well. And so it's so needed right now.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing all of that, because that, not only is it a hard topic personally, like as a human, but when others hear it, they realize, or it helps them realize, that they aren't alone, right? That's part of my mission behind this podcast. It's more to get our stories out there, and for more and more people to understand we are more alike than we are separate or different. Going through all of that, having all of those memories come back online, as you say, that in itself had to have been traumatic. Like, that's a lot that can come in super fast. unexpectedly, kind of, because you don't get to control when it comes back. Yeah. So oftentimes we end up being our first client. How did that moment, like, how were you able to keep your nervous system in? I'm sure it was not 100% regulated, but as regulated as it could be in that moment.
Yeah.
Like, how did you walk yourself through that? Because I think this conversation is so big from a standpoint of many people have like glimmers of things that, oh, that something happened. Okay. But then they're afraid.
Right.
Right. So how do you cannot stand into power without understanding that you can work with that fear.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a great question. And to be honest, maybe an unconventional answer. I wasn't significantly dysregulated by this experience. Granted, I had tolerated so much distress in my life that, you know, this was just another like notch on the belt, if you know, for lack of better words. But I really think this depends on potentially one's spiritual lens, because I was clear at this moment. I was actually drifting to sleep. So I was in like theta wave state. So I was as relaxed as I possibly could have been, which is what allowed me for that reception to come through. And I have experienced so many bouts of insomnia in my life, and, you know, psychic attacks in dream time, and a lot of sleep paralysis and things that aren't safe at night. So I was very quickly able to distinguish that this wasn't that this was actually really strong divine connection that was being made and coming through. And so for that, like I said, like in A Christmas Carol, it felt like there was a guiding entity, whatever that was. And I was able to find safety in that, which again, I know not everybody would be able to have that experience, but the repeated question, because I was receiving images from preschool and details and haircuts and outfits and the small stuff that you really don't think matters. But when you can't remember your life, all the things matter. And so I was being asked by this guiding entity, what else do you remember? What else do you remember? What else do you remember? And it was a very gentle voice. It was prompting me in a really slow and steady way. And it was up to me and my internal knowing that had been so long suppressed to answer those questions. Instead of being told by something or someone else what had happened, I was able to remember it kind of in my own way. And so, you know, if you know me, you know that I do things in a really expedited way and I learn very fast. And so the download, you know, quote unquote, happened perfectly for me. That said, I did have to do a lot of resourcing afterwards, because essentially I'd realized that I had been keeping a secret my whole life that I forgot that I had. And I made a pact with myself when I was a kid to keep this secret until I was off the planet. And in my eating disorder recovery, you know, secrets keep you sick. And so it wasn't in alignment for me to keep the secret anymore. And so I made a decision to bring it to therapy and to actually take the step to tell somebody and see what that sounded like to say out loud and to own that. Because, you know, I had to feel all the feelings and then I had to like say it. And my therapist, who was so brilliant, I've been seeing her a long time and I wouldn't be who I am without her in my life. She said, not only is this a huge deal, but it makes total sense, because I have a history of all of my therapy care providers, nutritionists, psychologists, psychiatrists, everybody asking me like, what happened? You know, and that was my least favorite question, because it almost felt like I had to justify why I was struggling so much instead of people just meeting me in the struggle. And I hated those questions of why are you here and what happened? And, you know, what do you think has caused this? As if I didn't already spend every moment of my life trying to figure it out. So I finally felt like I had the answer. And no matter how hard that is to deal with, and I'm still working to integrate all of that information, because so much has come from me being able to come out with this story. And it's not always good, because, you know, there's a lot of relational dynamics that are changing and people don't always have the ability to handle this information. And so there's a way in which I've had to go deeper into myself and learn about myself in a way that I don't feel I otherwise would have been able to without the subconscious healing work. And so the long and the short, to really answer your question, is that I feel that this is a gift. I treat feelings as messengers. I think they're so incredibly wise, no matter how unpleasant they are to feel. I like to see memories like clues or gems into past versions of us that we otherwise wouldn't have access to. And I call in kind of the concept in homeopathy of a healing crisis, and how when the body's in a detox state, when it has a rash or it's breaking out with some type of flu or some type of expression that doesn't feel so good, our perception is that we're sick, or our perception is that something's wrong. And in reality, the body's healing. That's its default mechanism, is to heal. And so we're so inverted just collectively in our perception of what's going on in the body, because we're not taught to understand that these are good things. And so I actually gratefully had been in a place at this time where the memories were coming through, where I knew this was a great thing, because it was pushing me deeper into a greater expression of my healing. And that's what I really wish for everybody else to know about themselves too.
So I know you have a gift for our listeners, and I feel like it's very much tied into your journey. Can you share a little bit about it?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have a comprehensive guide. Essentially, it's a free affirmation and resource kit for sustained health and wellness. And so I've broken down the basics of helping the body heal, whether it's from acute or chronic pain, water intake, food intake, movement, detoxing, whatever it is that you might want to be focusing on in your life right now. I have a list of really life-changing affirmations that help reprogram the mind from a neuro-linguistic reprogramming aspect. And so really working with these mantras, and then it's paired with an exercise. So whether that's some type of mindful yoga or movement, or some type of behavioral change to call into your life with food, or with, upping your water intake, it goes into specifics about different commitments that you can try. And I always say this is a choose your own playground adventure, because it's too much to take on all at once. But the goal is to just commit to one thing for 3 weeks, every single day for 21 days. And then you can call in something else, and you can really build your foundation of health from the basic level. And so whatever you're going through emotionally or mentally or energetically, like whatever feels hard right now, if you can stabilize the body first, all of those things will start to shift as well. But the commitment to self is the energy that we're working on. So it doesn't really matter so much what you do. It's more about how you do it and the intention behind your doing it. So if you want to commit to lemon in your water every morning, just commit to that. It's as simple as that, right? And if you want to commit to 1 extra glass of water a day, commit to it. And there's so much that happens in that commitment that I would love to support people with. And so this is a do no harm process. Just it can kickstart or complement wherever you are in your healing journey.
I love that it's mind and body. And earlier this week, I was speaking with someone, and the question of self-esteem, self-value, at our core, that's what we're all working on. And she was like, if you want to feel self-esteem, do esteemable things. If you want to feel greater self-value, do more valuable things. And this is a prime example of stepping into that and gifting it to yourself. So I hope everyone takes advantage of this. I know I will be. And Paige, if we're trying to get a hold of you, we want to reach out and see if we're a good match, or they have questions, where can we find you?
Yeah, so my website has the free gift, as well as a whole bunch of information about what we do in session and what to expect together. So my website is my business's name. So it's www.innerrealmwellness.life, innerrealmwellness.life. And then on Instagram and Facebook, I'm very active on social media for free resources and education and content as well. So my handle is just at Inner Realm Wellness. So you can shoot me a direct message. If you'd like to email me, it's paige@innerrealmwellness.life. So you can find me there as well. And I'm always around to chat.
Perfect. And we'll have all of those in the show notes. Thank you so much for coming on. And Paige, I have one last question. My focus these days has been on joy. So what's one thing that brings you joy?
It's a great question. Honestly, it's a simple answer for me. It's the sun. I am the most joyous when I am in sunshine. And that's why I live in Colorado. That's why I moved to Colorado, actually. And so if the sun's out, the fun me is out, and it's a great day.
I love that. Thank you so much, Paige, for joining us today. Again, all of Paige's contact information will be in the show notes. Definitely grab this resource. It's mind, body, and you want to build that sense of value, do valuable things. And here's a great way to do that for yourself. Again, I'm Jaydali Desai, and thank you all for tuning in. And until next time, we're wishing you a beautiful day. And remember, the time is now.